The real cowboy strikes, Batman and Robin.
Alright, so this video is gonna be a little bit different. In the past, I've been asked to put together a Batman fan cast, and that's not necessarily something I'm a fan on because I don't really like thinking about what ifs. Quite frankly, they just make me really sad. And also because I usually see these videos as being people trying to will something into reality when ultimately they're basically playing the nerd equivalent of fantasy baseball. But this is something I've been asked about enough times that I figure, why not? Might as well. So to ensure that this isn't some desperate plea for a major movie studio to listen to some dork on the internet, I will exclusively be fan casting actors who are no longer with us, and therefore, unfortunately, can never go on to play these parts. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying this is an all or nothing type of scenario. I'm selecting actors who, based on their previous work and acting abilities, I think could potentially work well with the roles that they're given. There are still plenty of other great actors and actresses who could have played these parts, possibly even better. I'm not even saying that this is definitive, these wouldn't be the best people for the parts, these are just some people who I think would have done really well if given the chance, in my opinion. I'm also not saying that this project could have ever taken place in any realm of reality, as all these actors had passed at different points in time, and at different stages in their career. The only rules here for this little creative experiment is that the actors that I'm casting have to be dearly departed. This isn't me saying that this would be the ideal Batman movie, just that I believe these actors could have been interesting in the roles that I'm unofficially assigning to them. With that being said, let's get right into it. For the role of Batman, I think Ray Stevenson would have done a good job. Stevenson brought a sadness to the role of the Punisher that I think would also be ideal for Batman and Bruce Wayne. He can be tough and threatening, but he doesn't lose his humanity in doing so. You can tell that despite this gruff exterior, there's still a person with vast depth underneath it. He can carry a character who is stoic and stern and still not feel one note, which, you know, is important for a Batman performance. It's very easy to take The Dark Knight into parody territory. Stevenson, in my opinion, would have been able to both play the Playboy and also his nighttime alter ego. For the role of Alfred, I have two choices here. As I think for Batman's butler and close confidant, I would probably go with Christopher Lee. He has an incredible voice and was a fairly articulate man, who made any line of dialogue given feel like a grandiose speech. Something that most Alfreds are known to do, and in some cases, overdo. There's definitely a good handful of villains that Lee could have played as well. He's no stranger to the dark side, but I definitely think if anyone could talk reason into Bruce Wayne, it would be somebody with a voice like this. Alternatively, for almost all the same exact reasons I've listed, I'd say that Christopher Plummer would have filled out the role nicely as well. Maybe even more so. For the cops of Gotham City, I would cast Dennis Farina as Commissioner Gordon. He's had plenty of experience playing a detective before, and I've never seen a performance that he turned in that I didn't like. Not to mention that he already matches the aesthetic of the character. There was very little you would have had to do. Throw a set of glasses and a trench coat on him, boom, Jim Gordon. Not that looks are everything. They help, but they're certainly not the defining point of the characters. I've said it before, I'll say it again, but for me it's much more important to have somebody that feels like the character rather than somebody who just looks like the character. Of course, ideally you'd want to meet somewhere in the middle and get the best of both worlds, and I really think that you would have got that here. For the role of Harvey Bullock, again, I have two choices depending on which route you'd want to go. Now, if we're going into comedic territory, I really think that John Belushi could have pulled it off. He had the right voice, the right look, and I think that he'd probably have a lot of fun with the part. It'd be interesting to bring a little bit of a comedy aspect into an otherwise serious story. Plus, I'm just a really big fan of John Belushi as is. Now, however, if you wanted to go with a much more mature route, alternatively, I'd say James Gandolfini would have been perfect for the part. He doesn't look or sound too off from the character as is, and if we're going for a corrupt cop, I think years of playing a made man certainly doesn't hurt. Speaking of made men, let's talk about the crime families of Gotham. This one's gonna be short and sweet because I feel like this doesn't merit much of an explanation here. But I think James Caan would have made for a very good Carmine Falcone. It isn't hard to imagine him coming off as in charge and intimidating. Because quite frankly, he always did. Even in roles where he didn't necessarily have to go that route, there was just something about this guy that gave off that impression. For similar reasons, I think Danny Aiello, Frank Vincent, or Tony Sirico could have made for a good competitor in Sal Maroni. I would have taken any of them could have done it. Now, let's move on to villains. Now, this one might be my most controversial on here. I don't know, I'm sure you guys are already complaining in the comment section, and to be honest with you, even if you are, I'm really interested in seeing what you have to say. So, if there was ever a video of mine to voice your opinions, please do it here. This is the one I'm most interested in, because so many of you asked me to do this, I want to see what the feedback for when I actually have done this is. For the role of the Joker, this is going to sound crazy, but man, did this guy sound crazy. I believe at some point in time, Tom Sizemore really would have made for a deeply unhinged and frightening take on the Clown Prince of Crime. He can sell insanity and snap instantaneously. Sizemore radiated chaotic unpredictability, just as the Joker does. I don't know how he'd look in clown makeup per se, that's not really part of the process here for me, but if we're going based on acting chops and who could pull off what, speaking solely on performance alone here, I think this would have been something to write home about. For the part of Hugo Strange, I feel that Lance Reddick really could have done something special. He has a similar demeanor to the character and had a knack for delivering dialogue in a way that made everything he said feel like an absolute certainty. Point blank, I just think that he had the right demeanor and the right energy for the part. For the role of Mr. Freeze, I'm going to be honest with you, out of all the people that I'm casting here, out of all of this little creative experiment, this is the one that I feel the strongest about. I would have cast Andre Braugher, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, of Brooklyn Nine-Nine fame to play Mr. Freeze. This to me is a no-brainer. I've always thought that he would have made a perfect Mr. Freeze. He's no stranger to the DC universe as is, having perfected Darkseid in the past. He can speak in a very monotone voice, but still manage to emote through that. He can be cold, but somehow still flawlessly let compassion burn through his own icy demeanor. And I truly think he'd be able to sell the broken heart of losing a loved one, mixed with the desperation of trying to save them. He could come off as intimidating, but also come off as loving and compassionate. He could bring forth a human warmth in spite of his naturally cold nature. Once again, out of all my choices here today, I would say that without question, this is the one I am most confident with. Though just as close is my next one. For the part of Two-Face, I would say Ray Liotta. For my all-time favorite character, District Attorney turned villain, I think this good fella could have made it work. He would excel as this conflicted bad guy. From a look standpoint, Liotta was a good-looking guy, which doesn't hurt when you're playing a character that's nicknamed Handsome Harvey. From an acting standpoint, he could easily be calm, cool, and collected, a smooth talker who knows his way around a speech. But he could also reasonably snap and sell infuriated psychosis. Lastly, for the role of the Riddler, at some point in time, I would have cast Matthew Perry. I think he had the right voice for the part, and quite frankly, much like Lance Reddick as Hugo Strange, the right demeanor. He's quick-witted and clever, sometimes to a fault, and his intellect can get so frustrating that it can make you want to shove him into a locker. I don't know, I think green could have been this man's color. Plus, knowing that Perry was a huge Batman fan really makes me think that he'd enjoy playing the part and bring a passion to his portrayal. I don't know, just my take. Again, I'm not saying all of these are picture-perfect choices, these are just names that I could see potentially playing those parts for the reasons that I've listed. So what do you think? How bad were some of these choices? Were there any good ones? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you like this video and want to see a part 2, also let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Batman fan? No?
Now, before I go, I don't usually do this. I've had a Patreon for a while now, but I've really struggled with what to do with it. Luckily, the time is upon us where I can actually offer you guys exclusive and extended content that I can't make here on the channel. With new restrictions on what kind of content can be monetized or hell, even shown here on the platform, now's as good a time as ever to be placing my completely unaltered, uncensored, extended videos on my Patreon. I don't want to put my videos behind a paywall, but that's kind of the best place to put them for the time being. So if there was ever a time to give a stranger money on the internet, well, I would like to think that now is that time. Just so everyone knows, all the money I make off my Patreon goes directly back into the channel. Everyone who donates to the Patreon will not be seen as a fan, but rather a producer of said content. And you will be credited as such in the closing credits here on the channel. So if you have the time and $1 to spare, help a guy out. If you can't, I appreciate your time and attention nonetheless.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.